So today we are starting our new unit where we are going to do a lot with graphing, both plotting points and graphing the lines. All right, so today's going to be kind of an introduction where we're going to talk about kind of what we do with graphing and why we care. Okay, so we're going to look at some situations and take a look at how we can look at those situations in a bunch of different mathematical ways. So here we get a situation where we've got a troop that's recruiting soldiers. They accept 50 new people a day. There's already 200 people in the group. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up a table to show how many soldiers will be in the group for the first 5 days. So this is going to be like a little T chart. We just call them T charts because they kind of look like the letter T. All right, and we're going to set this up where the two things that it tells us to compare is how many soldiers are in the group and how many days there are, right? So we're going to put the number of days over here, and we're going to put the number of soldiers over here, right? And we just like to title our tables so that we know what we're talking about. Okay, I put the number of days over on this side because time is pretty much always going to be your x coordinate. It's always the one on the left because time is usually the thing that changes other things. The number of soldiers, that doesn't change time, right? You can't take some soldiers away and have like the time of day go back. It's not how it works. So days, as time goes on, that changes the number of soldiers. So that's kind of why we set it up this way. All right, now, one little trick that we're going to do, even though this says the first 5 days, I'm not going to start with day 1. I'm actually going to start with day 0. And this is a nice little trick because it helps me just sort of incorporate what's going on in this problem. I know that there are already 200 people in this group. So on day 0, there are 200 people. Okay. And then 1 day later, which would be on the actual first day, we've added 50 new members. So we had 200, now we're adding 50. So on the first day, now we've got 250. Okay, so see how adding in this extra day 0, it lets me kind of just incorporate this number so that I can see that in my table. All right, then on day 2, we're adding another 50 people. So we had 250, we're adding 50 more, so we're gonna be up to 300. On day 3, we add another new member group of 50. So that puts me up to 350. All right, day 4, I'm adding another 50 people. So that's going to put me up to 400. Day 5, I add another 50. So I'm up to 450. And then we can stop because remember our table just said the first 5 days. Okay. All right, great. So now we've got our little table. And we can kind of use this to look at what's happening with the soldiers, right? And you can see these numbers are going up by 50. These numbers are just going up by 1, right? So what we're going to do now is we're going to plot those points from the table on the graph. Okay, so we're going to look at this down the bottom. We're going to label this the number of days, right? Just like our first column in our table was. And along this side, I'm going to label this the number of soldiers, just like the second column was. Okay, and then we're just going to match these up. So at 0 days, there were 200 soldiers. So there's no number here, but here's where 0 days would be, right? And at 0 days, so 0 on the day side, there were 200 soldiers, right? So that's going to be represented right there, right? 0 days, 200 soldiers. That's not a point, that's just a 0. Right, and then after 1 day, there were 250 soldiers. So here's 1 day, here's 250 soldiers. So I'm going to put a point right there where it marks between 1 day and 250 soldiers. Day 2, we had 300 soldiers. So here's day 2. Here's 300. Right? And I'm going to find the point where they intersect each other. So that's right there. Okay, on day 3, there's 350 soldiers. So here's day 3. There's 350. There we go. Right? Day 4, we had 400 soldiers. So here's day 4. There's 400. And then day 5, we had 450. Okay, and then there's a graph of this data that I had. All right, so it's just a different sort of display. And you can kind of see, right, when you look at this one, you can see that the numbers are getting bigger. When you look at this one, you can kind of see, oh, look, yeah, these numbers are going up, right? And there's a nice little pattern here. So looking at data in a graph sometimes just tells you more than just straight up looking at the numbers. It can get really confusing to just look at numbers. But if you look at the data all kind of spread out like this, you can sort of look at it and see what's going on a little bit better. All right, then question 3 says, can you use this graph to predict the number of soldiers in the troop on the 7th day? Okay, so I'm looking for the 7th day. So I'm kind of saying, okay, well, over here, here's where day 7 is, right? So this guy right here, this is where day 7 is. So can I predict where I'm going to be when I hit day 7? Well, yeah, right? If we kind of look at it, I keep going up and over one box, right? So I can kind of predict that it would go here, right? And that's at 550 days. So I can kind of use this graph and follow the pattern, right? And make a prediction. Now, this question is asking me, how can I use the graph? So I don't actually want to answer this question 550. That's not what they're looking for, right? So how did I use this graph? Well, I followed the pattern, right? I looked it over here. I said, oh, look, these dots are following this pattern. And then I just continued that pattern to where I thought my new point would be for day 7. Okay, so how can I use it? Well, I can use it by following the pattern of the points to where day 7 was. Okay, remember you can stop and pause this video at any time if you're getting, like if it's going too fast for you. Okay, in class when you're in here, I give little pauses so that you have time to catch up and write things down, but you don't get that in a video. So when you're watching the video, feel free to stop it, pause it, get caught up, copy things down, okay? All right, so let's look at this next one. So taxi service charges a $10 flat fee plus $5 per mile traveled. Okay, so we're gonna set up a table again that shows the total fee for the first 10 miles. So I'm setting up my table. All right, and the two things we're comparing is we're comparing the amount of money and how many miles traveled, right? So how many miles you travel dictates how much money you have to pay, right? So I want over here to be the number of miles, right? Because that's the thing that's deciding how much money I have to pay. All right, and even though this says the first 10 miles, I'm gonna do that thing again where I'm gonna start at 0. Okay, so say you rented this taxi, right? And they show up and then you say, oh, never mind, I don't actually need this, right? They're still gonna charge you that $10 flat fee because you kind of wasted their time, right? They still had to drive over like they were gonna pick you up. So they're still gonna charge you that $10 flat fee, but you don't have to pay any extra money because you didn't actually go anywhere, okay? Now, if you drive 1 mile, then you're gonna have to pay $5. So you have to pay the $10 flat fee plus the $5 for the mile that you went. That's $15. Okay. If you go 2 miles, well, you're going to pay $2 per, or $5 for each of those 2 miles. That's $10 plus the $10 flat fee. So that's 20. Okay. If you go 3 miles, you're going to pay $5 for each of those 3 miles. That's $15 plus the $10 flat fee. So 25. Right. 4 miles, I'm going to have to pay $5 for each of those miles, right? So that's 20 plus the $10 is 30. All right, now next up, I'm gonna have 5 miles. So I could keep thinking of it the same way that I'm doing 5 miles times $5 plus that $10 fee. Or I can just think, well, if it was $30 for 4 miles, I have to pay an extra $5 for the next mile, right? So that's gonna put me up to 35. And then if I go 1 more mile, I have to pay another $5, so that puts me up to $40. And then 1 more mile, it's another $5, so that puts me up to 45. Right now, our problem says to go up to the first 10 miles. I kind of ran out of room, so I'm going to continue my table over here. So for 8 miles, I'm paying an extra $5, so that's going to put me up to 50. 9 miles, an extra $5. And then 10 miles, so I could look at it and say, okay, an extra $5 puts me at 60, or we could have calculated it, $5 for each of those 10 miles, that's $50, plus the extra 10, that gets me to 60. Okay, so there's my table. All right, so now we're going to plot the points from the table on the graph. So down here is going to be the number of miles, right? And over here is going to be how much money you spend. And we just have to be careful because look at these numbers on the bottom. See how these are going by 2s, not by 1s? Okay, so you're going to have to be really careful about where you put your numbers. So the first one we have is at 0, we're at $10. So here's 0, here's $10. So there's that point. After 1 mile, you're at 15. So 1 is going to be halfway in this box, right? That's 0, that's 2. Halfway between is 1. And then $15 is going to be halfway between 10 and 20, right? So that one's sort of like in the middle of a box. All right, next up we got 2 and 20. So here's 2 miles and $20. Then 3 miles and 25. So 3, again, that's kind of in the middle. 25, also again, kind of in the middle. 4 miles, we're at $30. So there's that point. 5 miles, we're at $35. 6 miles, we're at $40. 7 miles, 45, back kind of in the middle. 8 miles, I'm at 50. At 9 miles, I'm at 55. And at 10 miles, I'm at 60. So there we go. There's all of my points plotted on that table. And again, if you need to pause this video, go ahead and do that so that you have time to catch up. All right, so now question 6, how can I use my graph to predict the total cost for a 20-mile drive, right? Well, I'm gonna do kind of the same thing I did last time, right? I would look at this and say, well, here's where 20 miles is. Let me follow this pattern, right? We can see that we're kind of going over half a box and up half a box, right? And it just keeps going over and up and over and up. And you can kind of use that to make a prediction. You could also look at this and say, hey, like these guys are all going in a straight line, right? So if I were to take this straight line and kind of follow it, right, I can kind of see, oh, well, this is where I'd be at $20. Okay, so the question's not asking me for a number, right? It's not asking me to answer, oh, I think it'll be $110. It's just asking me for how I would do that. So how would you do that? Okay, so think about that for a second, and I'm going to let you answer this question. I'm not going to write it down. Okay, but look at this graph and decide how would you use this to predict at $20 how much money it would cost you. Okay, so that's our kind of intro to graphing. This is what the point of graphing is. Is it so that we can look at data and we can make predictions off of it.